Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 422 of CryptoBiography, and it's The Realization. And here we go. He was exhausted. He'd worked all day long, and at the end had only a poor meal and a couple of copper coins for his trouble. And it had been like that for weeks on end. He fell into bed and was asleep almost at once. He woke up tired. The next morning, he got up at sunrise. They all padded out and started getting ready to work the fields. He was hoeing his row, breaking up the dirt clods and tearing out weeds. It was just as tiring as it was every day. But today, the owner came by. He rode on his horse, looking over all of them as though they were livestock. He looked down at the dirt clods in his hoe. Every day was like this. He looked down the row. There were dozens of them here, all of them working to bring the plants to life so they could eat. No. So that the food could be sold by this owner. No matter what they did, they gained nothing more than a couple of coppers a day and another day's aches and pains. His arms were strong, but painfully thin. The owner was jowly. He had so much to eat, he was corpulent, squatting on the horse. What did he have to lose? There was a good palm-sized rock by his foot. With a smooth motion, he stooped, drew back, and hurled the rock at the owner. It struck the man between the eyes. He fell off his horse. His two guards spurred their horses and charged him, while his toadying assistant jumped off his horse and checked on him. He knew he was in trouble. But then, was it any worse than his daily life? The two men had guns, but for now it seemed they wanted to beat him, possibly to take him into the police. They drew short clubs and charged, swinging down at him from horseback. He dodged. There was another stone, and he picked it up and hurled it. He aimed a little low, knowing the chances of hitting a man's head while on a moving horse was low. Because of this, it hit the man in the back after he had passed by. He spasmed and fell off the horse and writhed on the ground. The other guard took a swing at him from horseback with his club. He deflected it, just, with his forearm. It hurt, but didn't break any bones. He lashed out and pushed hard, and the man slid off. He landed on the ground, but wasn't injured, and sprang up, looking at him with fire in his eyes. He grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it in the man's eyes. The man was too slow and grunted with pain, wiping the dirt away. He ran up to the man, who was still on one knee, and stomped him hard on the side of the neck. The man collapsed. He took the man's pistol and turned to the other man he had unhorsed, who was still writhing in pain. He fired twice, and the man was still. He went over to the owner, whose toady was still next to him, and shot him once in the face. Then he shot the toady. Everyone else was stunned. "Friends," he said loudly, "by the rules of the owner and his brethren, I have committed a crime here today. You can turn me in, or you can help me. The owner did nothing but take our work and claim its fruits as his own. If we work the land for our own benefit, we can all live better lives." He could tell they were of two minds. On one hand, they could turn him in, and while the owner was dead, and they couldn't gain his approval, they might gain the approval of the owner's son, who would be inheriting the land. However, the son may blame them for not stopping the attack on his father, or he might even think it was a conspiracy, and if that happened, they would be attacked or punished in any of 100 ways. On the other hand, if they joined him, everything would change. They would hold the land, would work it, would sell the food for the benefit of all of them. But that was not without its risks. The owner's son would want the land back, and he had the backing of other powerful men. They might send an army to force things to go back the way they were. But they might gain the help of the other farms around. If others did as they did, took control of their lands, could any army stop them? If they turned him in, the risk was relatively small, but the gain was nothing, and they would continue on in their miserable rut, probably for the rest of their lives. If they joined him, the risk was large. There was surely going to be a fight. But if they held, their lives and the lives of their children would be improved forever. 3 people stood up, 2 women and a man. They walked over him and stood at his side. He smiled at them. Others, one by one, stood up, and they walked to what became a growing knot of people. And over the body of the owner and his lackeys, they bonded, and they planned, and they fought. And the future was changed. And that's the end of the story. A very short story this week. Yeah, lots going on in this one. Obviously, it sort of has, it's obviously a political story more than anything else. I didn't write, too many layers or levels into it, and I don't think it's very hard to read that way either. But yeah, it's just sort of things thinking in my head, like the thing is, though, that in the modern world, like this is obviously not super modern, because even though there were pistols involved, the men were all horseback, which presumably means, 19th century technology, roughly. In any case, in modern times, like, if you work on a farm, you're not going to see the owner. The owner might live 1,000 miles away, has a whole, layers of people working for him to keep distances between the people who actually do the work and themselves. They often are, corporations, and so the actual owners of the corporations are all split up between, a few dozen people mostly, and then a tiny bit fraction for a bunch of other people. And yeah, anyway, it's just some thoughts I had. Decided to turn it into a story. And it's not as easy as the story makes it seem, but maybe it's not as complicated as it has to be either. I'm not sure. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Blue Sky. And thanks for listening. Words and music, copyright 2025, Brandon Starr, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.